So a lot of people do need to supplement with magnesium because, one, it's needed for the most enzyme and cofactors in the body than any other nutrient, and because we don't really have it much in Australian soils. So if your body has given your bubs that harmful bacteria, then it's going to inhibit their body's ability to even absorb iron through breastfeeding and through the solids of foods. And that is why pre-pregnancy is key, to make sure you're optimizing that microbiome so that your baby isn't going to end up deficient, and then you have to do a whole kill-off process just for them to absorb iron. Welcome back to Balance Beings Uncut, where we talk about health, wellness, and everything in between.
Welcome back to another week on our podcast, where we are going to be delving into all things iron supplementation, absorption, mechanisms of action. So might feel a little bit practitioner based, but we're going to make it really consumer friendly as well, so that you can understand a little bit more about why iron is so important and why it is a big focal point for us in the clinic.
We're going to talk about some other nutrients as well as iron, but iron will be the focal point for this podcast, just because 1 in 3 Australians are iron deficient. 1 in 3 women, I think the stat actually is, which is a really, really big statistic. And a lot of people say, I've always been iron deficient, or I've tried everything and I'm still low on iron. Well, let's talk about why and why this is happening. Do you want to get started? So why do you think that everyone is iron deficient, and why do you think it keeps reoccurring?
Based on the Western civilization of how we live, what is usually the first thing that somebody has in the morning when they wake up?
A coffee.
So iron absorption is blocked by tannins, and tannins are really strong and found within black tea and also coffee as well. So tannins will block that nutrient absorption of iron. So usually when we're starting the day with a meaty or higher protein breakfast or iron-rich breakfasts, and we're consuming that black coffee on an empty stomach, that's going to actually block that iron absorption. And same throughout the evening. So we live in a society where we really like to dampen down our digestive fire as well. So something I talk about a lot in the clinic is spacing your liquid consumption away from your meals. So in the evening, if you're having a nice big red juicy steak, but you're dulling it down by having so much water, because we're adding so much extra sodium to meals as well, we're dampening that digestive fire and that ability to actually pull apart those amino acids, that protein, and help to support that iron absorption as well. So there are a few factors, but one that we also look at in the clinic a lot is through gut microbiome. So what's stuff that usually happens
going
there?
back to what Madison just mentioned, if we think about people that have a tea or a coffee with their meals, literally 50 to 60% of people will do that. They'll have it with their meals. You're doing that with something that's iron rich, you're not absorbing it. And then second of all, if you're having even water with your foods, you're diluting your pH levels and reducing your pH levels, your fire, which then reduces your ability to break apart the meat and absorb the iron. So no wonder why 1 in 3 people in Australia are iron deficient, because that's such a big factor. But not only that, a lot of us have quite weak gastrointestinal systems and microbiome and intestinal barrier, and that's a big problem we see in the clinic over and over again. I think about 70 to 80% of kids that I test their gut microbiome function and intestinal barrier health, they have leaky gut. They have that intestinal permeability present. And so that is where we absorb our nutrients. So if our zonulin secretory IgA is not optimal and is not absorbing the iron properly, we're not going to absorb it in our intestines and our enterocytes where it absorbs.
Things like parasites that can be present within the gut as well, they like to steal nutrients, and one nutrient that they really feed off of is iron. So we don't like to typically prescribe iron unless in a dire circumstance, so being 3rd trimester pregnant, baby's about to take an iron download, that we'd look at going in straight with iron supplementation without going through and optimizing that gut function and improving that digestibility and absorbability first.
Yeah, and so a lot of people will just supplement straight with iron, and they don't realize that not only do you don't absorb it optimally if you're taking it every day, but if you're not taking it in the right circumstances, if you don't have the right cofactors, if you don't have the right type of iron, if you don't have the right milligram and dosage of iron, your body won't absorb it properly. And then if you don't have a healthy intestinal barrier or stomach lining or parasites or bacteria, then they are all factors that are going to impact your iron absorption. Another thing to also mention when we're talking about iron is if you've ever read your blood test before and you see that your iron is quite high, but your ferritin levels are low, then what that can indicate is you've actually got a type of active infection. So what will happen with our body with iron is when we've got an infection present, our iron levels will go higher. A lot of times, depending on the circumstance, if our body is smart enough, sometimes people's iron levels will drop and be into stored ferritin, so the body isn't using that to encourage infection, because infections and parasites and bacteria, they feed off iron. So if you've got that actively happening in your body and your immune system isn't functioning properly, then what can happen is your iron levels will just go to that instead of going to stored levels.
Yeah. So touching on that as well, living in the civilization that we live in, high stress, lots of inflammation, lots of inflammatory conditions that we see in day-to-day society, this will impact your iron pathology as well. So in the clinic, when we're running iron, we often ask for different inflammatory markers like CRP or ESR to be run as well.
Yep.
The best form of CRP to be checking is HS-CRP. So it's a highly sensitive CRP. Through different reference ranges, pathology companies want to see it less than 5, and that's showing that there's no inflammation. For optimal iron understanding and reading through pathology, we want to be checking CRP, but we actually want that less than 1. Any elevation over 1 can falsely elevate that ferritin as well. So where your iron might be okay, subpar, but you've got a CRP, so that's C-reactive protein, that's an inflammatory marker. If that's coming in at 6 or 7, and then your ferritin stores are at 115, that's going to be falsely elevated by the inflammation within the body. So that's going to be driving up a false ferritin. So when you see a GP and they're reading through, they've got these poor GPs, they've got 10 to 15 minutes with a client, they're reading through pathology, they're not having that time to actually piece it apart and read it thoroughly. They're going through from what the pathology company's given them, and if it's flagged red, then they go, okay, yep, low iron, it might have like a ferritin 8L. So then they go, okay, well, that's 8, that's low. I think the typical reference range for ferritin is between 15 and 150. And 8's low, beautiful. Okay, pop you on an iron supplement. But if it's coming through and that CRP is elevated and the ferritin's coming through at 115, they'll go, you're not iron deficient. Like, there's no reason for you to be breathless. There's no reason for you to have heavy periods. They won't be looking deeper at that a naturopath is looking at as well. So
what would be the main signs and symptoms you would say of iron deficiency?
Thinning hair falling out, different ridges on your nails as well can show that. Pulling down your mucous membranes and having a look in your eye, like the reds of your eyelid, can be a huge sign to see if you're anemic as well, because you're not getting that good flush of red. Being really fatigued. Fatigue is a huge sign of iron deficiency. And breathlessness. So breathlessness is a huge thing that's noticed during pregnancy if you're iron deficient. And you don't actually have to feel like that.
I feel like for kids, the ones I notice is the breathlessness, them sleeping more often than they should, the dark circles under their eyes, and them being quite pale, and then sometimes
Poor immunity as well.
Poor immunity, getting sick often. And then the other one I will find is eating on foods, like sand or dirt.
Yep. So that pica, putting foods in their mouth, that's not supposed to be food that they're wanting. Big sign during pregnancy as well, which when I had my eldest, I was 18. And I just loved chewing ice. That was like my one craving. So ice is
and kids as well.
Yeah, chewing, but just actively chewing ice. Archie's dad went out once and got me some frozen yogurt when I was pregnant, which anybody else would probably think that that's really lovely. But for me, I was like, all I want is ice. And I couldn't keep up with making ice in my freezer to just the chewing crunchiness was all that I wanted to do. And now looking back on pathology and different signs and symptoms, very, very iron deficient. And then as we look forward from there, lowered immunity for my kids as well. I was iron deficient for pretty much all of my pregnancies. Last 2, I supplemented to get it up. I was vegetarian. So really closely monitored that iron deficiency. through there and got it up for that third trimester, because that's when baby will take a huge iron download. So if you are low in iron during pregnancy, you're going to be giving your baby a low iron store from birth as well. So they'll take that iron stores for their first, is it 100 days of iron
I believe
stores?
so.
So it's up until they start needing to start consuming solid foods, pretty much.
And then the problem becomes is, if we're going back to that gut microbiome, and we'll definitely give you guys some tips in order to repair and heal the intestinal lining and help some things you can do in your daily diet to reduce bacteria growth and parasite growth, because that's going to then impact your iron. But what a lot of people don't understand is the fact that if you are consuming iron and you have a parasite, you're making the whole problem worse, because that parasite is impacting your absorption of the iron, and then you're feeding the iron to grow, the parasite to grow stronger with the iron. That you're making the whole case worse. But I know that a lot of people have limitations on being able to afford a gut microbiome to investigate those parasites and the bacteria in the intestinal barrier. But we've also got to remember that iron deficiency doesn't just impact our symptoms, but it impacts our body's ability to work properly. Like, if we talk about a little bit more about the systems that are impacted by iron as well.
Yep, so neurological systems as well. We've also got hemoglobin, so how your body's transporting that iron around the body as well. So that's your entire blood. And big sign of iron deficiency in females can be an increased menstrual fluid loss as well. So, which then can actually worsen your iron deficiency anemia.
Do you know the mechanism of action for that? Because I know that it's a sign for iron deficiency, but I wonder why the body's trying to lose more blood when it needs more.
I don't actually know.
Neither do I.
I
did try and investigate it once, and I couldn't find the answer when I looked for studies in regards to it.
It's really interesting, and I've also seen a few women that have experienced early pregnancy loss, which may or may not have been based on low iron, but they had an increased blood loss during that time as well, because, and yeah, that mechanism of action, it's like, why is the body making it worse?
Yeah.
But the body's really smart. So iron is extremely hard to get through food in the best circumstances as well, let alone, so we've got two different forms of iron as well. We've got heme iron, so things like your red meat, and then we've got non-heme iron as well, so things like leafy greens, your more vegetarian forms of iron. Pairing heme and non-heme together alongside vitamin C helps to optimize that overall absorption.
So oranges, capsicum, camu powder,
lemon, a bit of lemon juice on some greens alongside red meat when you're having it. Really good to get that whole form of iron in for iron absorption. When we're looking at the body being smart, so the only way to really lose iron once you have it, so if you come up positive for the hemochromatosis gene, which is a gene that stores too much iron, the only way, you can do it through supplements to try and block as much iron absorption, but one of the best ways to help regulate that iron is by bloodletting, so doing blood donations. So the body's really smart at trying to minimize that overall absorption, because once you have it, the body doesn't really get rid of it unless you're losing blood. So if you're a menstruating female, you do actually need slightly higher levels of iron and ferritin to be able to cope with that monthly blood loss. In saying that, the body's smart to not overload it. So it does make it extremely, extremely hard to hold iron. And time again, I see people that have been tested as low iron jump on prescribed iron supplementation through their GP, which is 100 milligrams of ferrous iron. So ferrous iron is one of the most poorly absorbed forms of iron. And at 100 milligrams, your body doesn't know what to do with this. This is just a catastrophe for the body.
It's far too inflammatory, and our body has a protective mechanism to not absorb more than 25 milligrams of iron at once. So there's no purpose in providing our body with more than 25 milligrams at once. It's only going to drive inflammation. And if we think about the caveman days, have you heard that terminology before about the caveman days? Okay, so in the caveman days, our body would kill a horse or a cow and we'd eat that straight, and that would cause iron overload and toxicity, and it would be death for humans. So our body created this protective mechanism that stopped our body's ability to absorb more than 25 milligrams every second day. So our body can't actually absorb more than 25 milligrams of iron every second day. And that's because we have that, our body protects us against the iron overload. It's literally genetically changed our bodies so that we wouldn't die.
So the body will release hepcidin. Oh my gosh, there's hepcidin and hespedrin. It will release hepcidin. So this is its natural way of monitoring that. So hepcidin is naturally inflammatory. So as we spoke about earlier, that inflammation will block iron absorption. So you consume meat or you take your iron supplement, your body then releases hepcidin. This is then inflammatory to then block any further absorption of iron. After 24 hours, it dips. So then on that second day, when you have a second iron supplement, or you're having red meat, some lamb, some steak, it will then increase that absorbability from that time period as well. For another release, it then dips, and that's when you supplement again. So that's why naturopathically we're looking at supplementing every second day. Lots of people recommend taking it. I don't know your specific prescription. Lots of evidence is to take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach.
Yep.
I do find that this can sometimes be uncomfortable for my really sensitive patients. So I do often recommend in the evening just before bed for a lot of my sensitive adults as well. Most of the time people aren't consuming coffee. We're away from any of those tannins, calcium, anything that might be blocking off that nutritional absorption as well. And in my head, I just go, when's the body healing the most and not utilizing everything? It's like when we're sleeping, it's time to heal.
And another thing, if you're a practitioner, making sure you're finding an iron source that you're using that's about 25 milligrams. It's iron biglycinate. It's got vitamin C in there for cofactor absorption. Spirulina also helps, and so do B vitamins.
Yeah.
So looking
little
at
bits of copper,
and,
vitamin
yeah,
A.
little bits of copper. Yeah. And then another thing to think about is, and if you think about that copper formulation, that's organ meats.
Yeah.
They're the cofactors that naturally have got a bit of copper in there. We've got a little bit of vitamin A in organ meats.
Yeah. And it's something that we
But if you're going to do organ meat, we love spleen over what's the other organ? Over liver, because liver's high copper levels, and we see a lot of kids that have high copper levels, which are worsening a lot of behavioural symptoms through copper overload. So we prefer spleen source as a form of organ meats.
Yeah. So a bit of a story background. As I said earlier, I was lower iron deficient, especially in my third pregnancy. So I did back-to-back pregnancies, as we spoke about a couple of podcasts ago. And I was iron deficient for both of them. I did get it back up. I checked around 32 weeks with my last son, Hamish. Iron deficient, so my hemoglobin was low. I was iron deficient anemic, so hemoglobin was low, ferritin was low, and my overall iron was low as well. They told me to go on a supplement, really easily absorbable and really, really great. It was horrible. I don't even touch that stuff. So I started dosing iron every second day and taking organ meat capsules alongside it on the off day as well. So I was taking iron. I got it up before I was 36 weeks pregnant as well, so I avoided the need of a transfusion. Lots of time in pregnancy, you can be suggested to do an iron infusion. The first line of defense for iron deficiency anemia within Australia is actually oral supplementation. So within 30 to 60 days, you do have the time to be able to get that your iron stores up by correctly dosing your iron and increasing that absorption, reducing any kind of nutritional blockages there as well. So I got that up, and I remember my midwife at the time was like, see how easy it is to get up when you're supplementing correctly? Because she thought that I was taking the Chemist brand iron supplement, because even as a naturopath, I still didn't have the confidence in saying, this is what I'm doing. But yeah, we got it up. It was fine. It was great. I wasn't breathless walking up to my midwife appointments from that point on, which was so nice. But yeah, a lot of the GP-based iron supplements once again, 100 milligrams of ferrous iron, it's going to drive incredible amounts of inflammation within the body because the body doesn't know what to do with that. And then when you go through to do a repeat GP blood test, most of the time, people that I've seen that come in that are iron deficient, they haven't been told to actually stop taking that supplement prior to getting their blood checked as well. So they've taken that iron, which is going to put free circulating iron higher upon that return blood test. Because of the inflammation of 100 milligrams of ferrous iron, we're going to have elevated CRP, so we're actually going to have that heightened ferritin as well. So boom, you're no longer iron deficient. But then on a recheck 12 months later, boom, crashed back down again. So was that iron ever back up? Probably not. It was probably just the circulating iron throughout your body and that high inflammation from not dosing correctly and not checking pathology correctly as well.
Yep, definitely. So going into causes of iron, so people know where it's coming from, I would say the biggest triggers is not having a healthy intestinal lining, parasite bacteria. You guys know I'm a microbiome fiend. Like I always relate everything back to that, but it's where we absorb everything besides vitamin D. I would say obviously heavy blood loss with periods, but that can be because of low iron as well.
Yeah.
I would say increased demand in your systems, like if you have a high stress load, if you've got thyroid dysfunction, your body needs an increased amount of iron, depending on what way it's swinging. What other common signs would you say?
That inflammation, I do see a lot of inflammation come from stress, and we do know that stress impacts the gut microbiome. So once again, bringing it right on back to that gut microbiome as well. And just not managing diet correctly. And there's so many different supplement and dietary advice out there now. You should be on carnivore, you should be vegan, you should be vegetarian. There's so many different pushes for different nutritional requirements. One of the best ones that I've found in the clinic is looking at genetic testing, which we've spoken about previously. It tells you your overall...
Instead of following a fad, see what your body actually needs.
Yeah, based on those genetics, it does show us how likely you are to have the hemochromatosis gene as well, because it's checking for those genes, if that's something. So iron in overload can be just as detrimental and just as inflammatory.
So hemochromatosis is a type of gene some people have that inhibits their body's ability to
regulate
and clear iron. So let's talk about some symptoms of that and how we essentially stop hemochromatosis. Very simple approach.
Lots of inflammation. So seeing people that come across like they've got arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, aching joints, red flushness of the skin as well. Really inflammatory. I've seen a lot of like neurological complaints that come from high iron also. Best ways to manage that, doing some blood donations. Have you ever done a blood donation before? It's fabulous. I always feel like a queen when I go in there to do blood donation.
My partner does them often. It's really nice.
I haven't done it in nearly 4 years because I've been pregnant or breastfeeding, and you're not allowed to donate your blood during pregnancy or breastfeeding, but it is a really great experience. So Red Cross does it. They now have an app on your phone as well, which tracks how many times that you've done a blood donation. So you can do blood, which I think is every 4 months. I want to say 3 or 4 months. Or you can do plasma as well. And you can donate either or. You go in there and they've just got snacks and drinks. And yeah, it's a really beautiful thing to do for society if you've got good iron levels. If you're
talk about hemochromatosis with that. So the only way to let go of that is really through release of the blood
through the donations.
But reducing inflammation is going to reduce the hemochromatosis and iron levels going back up as well.
Yeah,
which you did mention.
Yeah, and then blocking it with I have prescribed calcium. Yeah, calcium supplements.
Minimizing iron in the diet as well.
Yeah,
but eating the foods with tannins or calcium.
Yeah, having a coffee with first thing in the morning. No, I don't usually prescribe that. But yeah, just managing that gene as well is really, really important long term. for overall health and well-being. So knowing if you've got that gene, it's a good one to know time and time again, especially if you're consuming lots and lots of red meat and you're not feeling good and it's never been looked into. Naturopathically, we do look into it. If your iron or your ferritin's elevated, we will then suggest, why don't you do a gene test. It can be checked through your GP as well, if there's a bit of a family history there. Often, if there is a family link, it's spoken about. So just in my consultations, I just ask, have you ever heard of hemochromatosis? And most of the time they'll go, oh yes, my dad has that. And they know because it's spoken about, and they're usually doing those blood donations as well.
Yeah, but I also found some people that are older and they don't even realize they have it.
No, and it can be really damaging and inflammatory. I donated blood once when my hemoglobin was just on the cusp, because they go in and they check your hemoglobin levels through a blood prick. And I remember being absolutely chronically fatigued that afternoon. It was not good. It was really bad, and I had to jump on an iron supplement then for about 3 months to try and level it back out again. So I probably shouldn't have donated it at that time, but it was still a lovely gift to be able to provide to somebody.
And I think it's good to remember that this is why we like to wait 2 years in between having kids, is because we need to get all these stores back up, your zinc, your magnesium, your iron, the most common deficiencies we see in women. That's because we lose that all and we give that all to our baby and in breastfeeding as well. So it's really important that if you can wait, it's the best for your body, to give your body that time to build it back up, or go on supplementation and actually check in on those levels before falling pregnant again is really key. And it's going to reduce your miscarriage risk as well, because if you're deficient in nutrients, it's going to be harder for your body to grow and support that DNA in the embryo. While we're talking about babies and placenta, what I wanted to also mention is, again, microbiome. Obviously, I'm going to go back to it 1,000 times in every podcast. But not only do we transfer iron in pregnancy, but we transfer our gut microbiome from the second trimester onwards. So our bad, harmful bacteria we can transfer to our baby, and that is going to impact their body's ability to absorb iron. And their body's ability to absorb iron in the first 6 months of their life, and 6 to 12 months. The whole reason we go on solids at 6 to 12 months is for omega-3s and iron demands. That is because your body and breastfeeding can't give enough demands without foods. And that's why we go on solids for iron and omega-3s. So if your body has given your bubs that harmful bacteria, then it's going to inhibit their body's ability to even absorb iron through breastfeeding and through the solids of foods. And that is why pre-pregnancy is key, to make sure you're optimizing that microbiome so that your baby isn't going to end up deficient, and then you have to do a whole kill-off process just for them to absorb iron.
And just getting on top of your iron stores prior to falling pregnant is so much easier than getting
Prep
your
is
iron
everything.
levels up.
Yeah. It's just impossible once you get pregnant. It can be really hard to get them up.
It is a real struggle, and the symptom picture that comes along with that fatigue can be really debilitating to some women during that third trimester. Iron's a really important nutrient for babies in the first 12 months of their life. So obviously, baby's taking its first 100-day iron download from you during that last trimester, and then your body's going through a hemodilution as well. When baby starts going on solids, I think they need like 40 times more iron than an adult male.
Yep.
It is incredible the amount of iron that a baby needs. So going in for those really good iron-rich foods, making sure that you're pairing those foods correctly with those good optimal forms of vitamin C, heme and non-heme iron, and going in with that digestible iron. So pouches and kids' snacks often have iron oxide added to it, which can cause a lot of constipation. So back when I was born, the main food to start going on to during introduction of solids was rice cereal, which was so filled with iron oxide. And then I just remember when I started Archie on solids, my parents said that I should put him on rice cereal, and
Still get the same recommendation now. Oh, make sure you get the iron into him. Make sure you go on some rice cereal.
Yep, get it in, and it's like, How is rice?
You're just literally creating a leaky gut intestinal permeability picture with the inflammation you're driving from the iron oxide from the cereal.
Not to mention like the arsenic that's a heavy metal
rice.
that's found in rice as well, but like, and the constipation and the glucose peaks because it's a refined carbohydrate and it's white rice. Oh, I cannot get over that. That's just like, if I could die on a hill,
But we're not
it would
judging
be
at all, but we
No.
just want you guys to know and be aware of everything as well.
Just
so you can make the best informed decisions that you can.
Yeah, and you only know what you know at the time. And so really good forms of first foods can be things like bone marrow can be really great. I offered all my kids different slow cooked digestible meats. So we did baby led weaning, added in some of those organ meats where needed as well. Lamb cutlets are fabulous, especially if they're teething, because they're being able to actually gnaw on something and support it whilst they're still getting the iron in there as well. Spirulina. Spirulina has a digestible form of iron added within it as well. So and it supports detoxification pathways, antioxidant rich. It's really beautiful. Add it in with coconut yogurt, making like green smoothies and stuff for kids. So there's lots of ways around it. Have a look at, next time you're at shopping center as well, have a look on the back of different kids snacks. And if it says fortified with iron oxide, that's really going to increase inflammation within the body, and it's going to increase constipation as well, which is what rice cereal can do as well. So checking to make sure that they don't contain iron oxide. If time permits, making your own snacks for your children to avoid that and going for those good iron-rich nuts, seeds, leafy greens, meat where you can if you are a meat-eating family as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should talk about some ways to improve nutrient absorption in babies and adults so we can get some clear tips for everyone. So for me, with babies, you want to be working on the intestinal barrier to start with. So things like introducing gelatin from a young age, introducing things like gummies can be really helpful with the gelatin, looking at some really good quality broths to first introduce so that you're putting in some good quality meats into, like, say, I would say like a slow cooker is such a great form for babies and for adults, but you got the broth in there, so you're helping that intestinal barrier absorption. You can pop some lemon in there and some capsicum, and that's really going to optimize vitamin C absorption for the meal. I would say that would be like my go-to. And then
I add apple cider vinegar to mine
that's
as
a big
well.
one too.
It opens up so many other flavors, especially like Mexican flavors, adding in some cumin. Oh, love it. If you can add herbs and spices into your meal, it just elevates
and
everything.
it will balance pH levels too, to improve iron absorption as well. So if we think about all the different factors, we want to have vitamin C rich foods. So thinking about like kemu powder, capsicum, oranges with your meals, lemon, lime, that component. Then we want to think about improving our pH levels to improve the iron breakdown. So if we think about rocket, spinach can kind of be helpful, but then lemon, lime, apple cider vinegar, bitters improve pH levels, so putting them into your kids' meals as well. Then third, intestinal barrier health. So like that gelatin I was talking about, you can use collagen if you're an adult or a bit older.
Healing and sealing, like that.
Healing and sealing.
Really important.
That would be my 3 go-tos, besides, again, looking into parasite and bacteria work. If it can be deeper than that, a lot of times you're going to have to work on that in order to really treat the iron deficiency at its core.
A easy way of adding extra iron into your meals as well, if you're a little bit adverse to adding in organ meats. There are some really great organ meat capsules and powders now out there as well that you can add it in. But investing in a quality cast iron pan can be really beautiful. So I really highly recommend the Solid Kinetics range. They're low tox. You can get a satin one and then you just heat it up and seal it yourself, or you can get one that's already sealed, ready to go.
I like Castily, by the way.
Is that iron? That's, what's it called? That's an iron one as well.
Oh, they've got iron ones there.
Yeah. An investment in a cast iron pan, it can be a lot, and it is an investment. And I always say start with one that's, I've got I think it's the Solid Kinetics Satus pan, so it can do it can fry eggs and all of that, but then it's also got high enough edges that you can do a saucy dish as well. So it was like, oh, I couldn't justify 2 at the time that I bought it, and it was an investment. But the Lucky Iron fish is fabulous because
It's cheaper, and
I think it's around like $50,
it's
maybe
probably
a little
cheaper
bit
than
less.
that if you can source it in Australia alone. When I bought it, I had to get it in from overseas. Probably got it about 6 years ago. But you pop it into meals with some lemon, and it lets off that natural iron.
Yep. It's so
'Cause iron is a
easy to
metal.
add it in.
Yep.
And yeah, it's made from iron. Yeah, fabulous. Really easy to do. I add it into a lot of my treatment plans, especially for vegetarians that don't feel comfortable adding in organ meats. So that, like, the organ meats do have all your cofactors to help support that. Also, another really important, going back to the microbiome, is checking in on probiotics and making sure that when you're checking that gut microbiome, that you've got good sources of lactobacillus 299V and lactobacillus rhamnosus LGG. Both of these are really important for iron absorption.
So if you're really iron deficient and you think it might be microbiome related, you can give those specific types of probiotics to go with your iron, and that can help absorb soon as well if it's a gut bacteria linked thing. But again, remembering that a lot of gut bacteria is low because there's other types of harmful bacteria and parasites that are in the way, and you got to clear them before you can put some good bacteria in there, because there's only so much room in the stomach.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. So yeah, those are really easy to add in there as well. That's why I love things like spirulina and good forms of yogurt that have got your beneficial bacteria in there as well to help with that digestibility and absorbability of the iron.
So now that we've talked about everything iron related, we're going to talk a bit more about zinc, magnesium and vitamin D. The reason we're going to talk about these is because we've talked about B12 and folate in a bit more detail with methylation MTHFR, which is a podcast we've already done. We're not going to dive too much in deep with those because they're pretty much methylation causes as the main deficiencies that we find. The reason we're going to talk about vitamin D, zinc and magnesium is because they're the other most common deficiencies we find in the clinic for children and adults. And we'll talk a bit more about why that is now, and a bit more about causes and symptoms and what we can do for that. So I think we should get started into magnesium a little bit more, because magnesium needed for 300 essentially parts of the body. I can't remember the mechanisms of action. So like if we think about energy Krebs cycle, if we think about our thyroid function, if we think about our hormones, precursor for hormones, for building blocks for all of that, for our brain health, for our neurotransmitters, everything needs magnesium. And the problem is Australian soils are depleted of magnesium. So even if we have magnesium foods, we're probably not getting much magnesium from the actual foods if that food is grown in Australia. So a lot of people do need a supplement with magnesium because, one, it's needed for the most enzyme and cofactors in the body than any other nutrient, and because we don't really have it much in Australian soils.
We also live in a highly stressed world, and as your body is stressed, it's needing and requiring more magnesium. And magnesium also helps with stress, so it's like this chicken and the egg scenario. Most of the time the stress isn't going anywhere, so making sure that you're supplementing with a good form of magnesium glycinate, there's also magnesium orotate. Different forms of magnesium help with different complaints as well, but the overall most digestible form is magnesium glycinate, unless of course there's like oxalate issues as well, which goes back to the gut microbiome.
Magnesium citrate does help with oxalate clearance.
Pairing with calcium citrate as well in a good balance is really great if there's that oxalobacter oxalate issues there as well. But yeah, magnesium's beautiful. You can absorb it transdermally, which means that you can absorb it through the skin as well. So things like Epsom salt baths, magnesium creams, sprays, all of that can help with that magnesium absorption, as well with supplementing, especially adults. There's not many adults that I don't ever prescribe magnesium to for different ailments, menstrual cramps,
It is
headaches.
the most supplemented nutrient as well in all naturopath fields.
Yeah, and it tastes good.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel good.
And if you're stressed, remember, none of your body can't function properly. High risk for, low libido, erectile dysfunction, everything. It's something that doesn't relate to.
Yeah, I love magnesium, and it's I give magnesium to my son. He's really funny. He will go to his dad's house and they just know. He'll come out and be like, my legs are aching. Can I have some magnesium? And they're like, you are your mother's child. But yeah, it's so nice that like my kids know how important it is to have magnesium as well.
Because they can notice a difference. And we'll notice the biggest change for magnesium, especially with kids that have got that methylation profile as well, because you need it for the methylation, detoxification, elimination.
And back to leg cramps, magnesium is one of the best nutrients for that. I do see a lot of women coming in with leg cramps during pregnancy and they're like, but I'm taking magnesium, I'm doing this. The other nutrient that's really important, that's often overlooked for leg cramps, there's two actually, vitamin D and calcium.
Yeah.
So calcium's really important if you're getting those leg cramps, especially in pregnancy because of those contractions that you're going through, needing to support that calcium for that
and
cycle as well.
essentially when you think about magnesium and what we want in magnesium, if you're looking for a supplement, what we would recommend is magnesium and then some B vitamins and a little bit of calcium to have for full absorption. I would say is my go-tos in looking for a supplementation, and then magnesium glycinate. We have some amazing brands on the patient portal like Orthoplex Magtor or Metagenics Energy X would be my go-tos.
And if you're taking a supplement that has calcium in it, take it away from your iron supplement.
Yes, or it will impact the absorption of iron.
Yeah. But yeah, calcium, as we enter, I do see a big like dairy-free movement coming through at the moment. Like I do know myself, I don't drink cow's milk, I drink soy milk. I don't have any fortified milks. I don't have calcium fortified milk. Calcium is one of the nutrients that I do know that I need to keep in check as well. So I love the Green Nutritionals Marine Calcium. Because it's got your other electrolytes in there as well and other minerals to help support it. And 1 teaspoon is like 100% RDI of calcium.
And the reason we love it, to butt in, is because it's actually an algae supplement. So it's not really a supplement. It's literally a form of food that is in a powder. And that's why I love it, because it's completely bioactive, because it's not a synthetic form of supplementation.
Yeah. And it's fairly tasty. I took it all through my 3rd trimester of my pregnancy because I was having like that shin splint leg cramps. And I'd mix it in with my magnesium every night. And it was so nice. It just made it go like a little bit murky, but I couldn't taste it. And it was fabulous. It was a really beautiful addition. And it just goes so far. And a lot of kids have low calcium intake as well. So easy to supplement for those fussy kids because the dosage for a child,
just mixing an oat or a smoothie, my kids don't even notice.
Yeah, and you're looking at like 1/4 of a teaspoon for most kids, up to 1/2 a teaspoon. So it's very, very easy to get in marine calcium.
Yeah. So if we're talking about magnesium and calcium, what would you say the biggest signs and symptoms for each of those are and how they differentiate when you're looking in clinic?
Muscle aches and cramps, inability to wind down.
This is magnesium, by the way.
Yeah, magnesium. Headaches, behavioral complaints, up all night singing. I'm just like looking at all the symptoms that my
being
son
highly
finds.
strung.
Highly strung. Well. That can be all big ones. Calcium, I'm looking at like thyroid signs as well. A lot of that can go into a need for extra calcium, bone mineralization, tooth decay, easy broken bones or reoccurring sprains, strains, and breaks can all play into that calcium picture as well.
Yep, definitely. All right, so now we've talked about magnesium and calcium in a bit more detail. I feel like that pretty much sums up magnesium and how to dose it and what to dose in the calcium too.
Magnesium, tolerable until you get digestive complaints.
Yeah, and in regards to magnesium sources, if you are looking for dietary sources that don't have the best but are the highest forms, magnesium wise, I would say would be spinach, green leafy veg, nuts like cashews and magnesium are my go-to.
Yep.
But then again, we don't know how much they actually have when they're grown in soil that is not really magnesium rich. All right, so besides that, we're going to talk a bit more about zinc and vitamin D. So let's dive into zinc a little bit more. Zinc is required in high amounts to keep our intestinal barrier healthy. So if you have a zinc deficiency, then you have a higher risk of leaky gut. You also have a higher risk of histamine issues. So I see that some clients have histamine issues because they can't clear the histamine because they don't have zinc, because they're zinc deficient as well. Zinc is also really, really needed for skin health as well. So if we notice that clients have a really slow skin recovery rate, like it's taking like 2 weeks for an acne to heal, slow healing, or bruising that's not clearing, zinc deficiency.
Especially with kids too, like if they have fallen and grazed their knee and you're coming up to 2 weeks and it's not healing, zinc deficiency for sure.
Yep.
Poor immunity.
Sometimes they will get the dark circles under their eyes. We either think it's zinc or iron, but it doesn't always mean iron. It can sometimes mean zinc as well.
And my dark circles mean Hamish. Hold on.
But the other thing is development-wise with speech, and zinc and magnesium are a big one, and then zinc with global developmental delays, I notice, is a big one as well.
And food fussiness. So your
biggest sign for kids.
Low zinc will increase food fussiness and taste perception, because you need good levels of zinc within your body to help support taste function. My son was quite fussy when he was younger, and we delved in a little bit deeper, got him a good zinc supplement, and boom, honestly, I kid you not, within 10 days of taking a quality zinc supplement, increasing that zinc, it helps with taste perception. In-person clinics, I don't know if you learned it back in student clinic, there's a zinc tally. It's actually a really poor way of testing to see if you're zinc deficient, but it's a fun experiment to do, and it tastes horrible. Have you done it?
I didn't taste it.
Oh, so it means that you're zinc replete, and that means that my zinc was poor, but I don't have it in me to try it again because the taste is so bad.
Yeah.
But zinc also for kids with eczema, really important. So you're breaking down that histamine, but you're also supporting that skin healing and skin cell regeneration as well.
So some signs of zinc deficiency in kids would be delayed bruising, under the eyes, food fussiness, behavioural development, poor skin healing, eczema.
Poor immune recovery.
Yeah, poor immune recovery as well. So sometimes some of these symptoms can go hand in hand, and that's why testing is key as well.
And we don't just go in and supplement because you think, get the help of a practitioner.
You need to get the milligrams based on their weight as well, and based on how low the level is. And then also with zinc, it again absorbs in the stomach, but we also need it for the intestinal barrier health too.
And just because you're thinking of popping your child on a zinc supplement, I do always like to plug practitioner brand supplements because they are usually better quality and less excipients as well. So you're going to get more bang from your buck through looking at practitioner-only supplements.
And the forms of zinc that we like?
Zinc glycinate and zinc picolinate are my two favorite.
Yep.
Zinc citrate is there. It's a cheaper and easier form, but it's not as highly digestible.
For adults and children. So now that we've talked about all the key nutrients that we see in deficiencies and how to supplement and why we get deficiencies and symptoms, I wanted to talk a bit more about vitamin D. We have covered vitamin D in another podcast, so I wanted to briefly talk on it. So vitamin D is actually not activated and absorbed in the intestines. It's actually activated in the liver. So we actually, with vitamin D, we actually need our liver to be functioning properly and detoxifying and be healthy. If you're getting liver enzyme tests and you see that like GGT or other liver markers are high, then it's a sign that you're probably not activating your liver and you're higher risk for having a vitamin D deficiency. If that's the case for you and you've always had a vitamin D deficiency and you haven't been able to treat that besides vitamin D injections, then what I would recommend is working on your liver and also getting activated vitamin D, but which is practitioner based. We can't give that without testing first because we don't want to put you in a vitamin D overload, which we can do, but essentially we can get a vitamin D deficiency just from your liver not activating the vitamin D. So you need active forms and you need to treat the liver so that you can absorb non-active forms as well. Best source of iron, best source of vitamin D in diet is obviously the sun. We get so much there, but also keeping in mind that it takes actually up to 30 minutes for your skin to absorb the vitamin D. So if you're going to lay and sunbathe and then you go into the beach with your kids, you've just washed off the vitamin D you're going to absorb, and it showers as well. So if you're out in the sun with vitamin D, try to not wear sunscreen because you're going to impact the vitamin D absorption. Be out there for a short period so you're not getting sunburn as well. And then third, don't go and have a shower or go into the beach straight away, because then you're going to wash that vitamin D directly off your skin that hasn't yet absorbed, because it takes some time, up to 30 minutes to an hour.
And you need cholesterol to help support that absorption as well. So bathing and exposing points of your skin that have got more fat stores as well helps to support your vitamin D absorption. There's an app called D-Minder that shows your vitamin D for where you are in the world and how long you need to get that. So typically 1,000 IU vitamin D supplementation is equivalent to about 10 to 15 minutes out in the sun. So even supplementing at 1,000 IUs isn't typically enough to, well, it just isn't enough to help get you out of vitamin D deficiency. I love vitamin D. I could talk about vitamin D for ages, so somebody cut me off. But also very important for immune health as well. With vitamin D, my favorite way of getting vitamin D in dietary wise is mushrooms. So mushrooms are fabulous. They do contain a good form of vitamin D, but then where are they when they're stored in the shopping center? They're in a dark, cold room, because that's what helps to support the longevity of them in storage. So what I do is, if I'm having mushrooms for dinner or breakfast, pop them on a plate with their gills up. So like a white cup or brown cup mushroom, things like lion's mane mushroom, enoki mushroom, oyster mushrooms, everything. We've got a mushroom farm near us. I go down and nerd out about mushrooms. They're my favorite food as well. But popping them up with their gills up and placing them out in the sun to help support that vitamin D infusion into those mushrooms before you cook them and eat them. So I'll pop mine out around lunchtime and just let them like cook in the sun all day, and then cook them and eat them. I love mushrooms. They're so delicious.
And like Madison said, best ways to absorb vitamin D is where we least expect it. So places that have a bit more cholesterol and fat on us, and also the areas that are, what are they called? Like
Bare.
The bare, like less tanned areas, essentially, is where we're going to absorb more vitamin D. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is, a lot of people get worried about sunscreen, but they want to help with their kids' vitamin D levels. How would you address that?
To be diplomatic about that.
I know.
Supplement if you're scared.
Your kids need sun exposure without sunscreen for vitamin D. That's the fact. I would recommend 20 minutes a day of it exposed outside of direct sunlight, in regards to that time where we know that the sun is the most deadly. So I will take my kids out for 20 minutes of sun exposure with their legs and arms exposed as a minimum, without sunscreen, and 20 minutes before 10 a.m. or after 2:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. depending on whereabouts you live.
I do the deeply illegal thing when my kids are at kindy. You're supposed to apply sunscreen on them in the morning when they're outside to play, but that's when like the sun's safest, so I never put sunscreen on them in the morning. But they do apply sunscreen in the afternoon. So I provide the kindy with low tox sunscreen options that we have. So
we love Mugu.
Yeah. Jinx. So they'll pop that on in the afternoon when they're out from after lunch as well. But so that they're getting that little bit of, otherwise they're putting sunscreen on first thing in the morning and they're reapplying in the afternoon, and they're not getting that sun exposure during the day. So covering up with like cotton, if you're really concerned, wearing a hat so you're not exposing your scalp or tips of your ears. All of that's good, because you're wanting that like thighs and upper arms mostly.
And what would you say the signs of vitamin D deficiency are in adults and children, if you know any clear signs?
Low immunity and low mood. So
low mood's a big one.
Yeah, if you've heard of SAD, that's seasonal anxiety disorder. It means like your worsened mood, worsened irritability, anxiety in winter months, and like if you live in places that have got low sunlight exposure as well, that's to do with that SAD. So vitamin D is really, really important, especially for that mood, immunity. Every thyroid case that I see in the clinic's got low vitamin D.
And where do we want vitamin D?
I like it between 120 and 150.
Same.
Naturopathically, over 100's fantastic.
We need it over 100. We'll get you to work diet, lifestyle, or prescription wise, depending on its level, unless it's over 100. That's the level we need it at, so we know it's not impacting any factors in your body. Secondly is zinc. We like it to not be sitting at just 10, because 10 to 20 is a good level. We want to be sitting at least a 15.
Yeah, at least 15.
Yep. Going back to zinc, we just didn't mention some good quality zinc sources if you're wanting to get more dietaries. Seafood and oysters are a big one, and then pepitas are my other go-to, which I just grind up and chuck into all my kids'
Yeah,
foods.
they're so good, pepitas. Oysters, I've never tried, and I couldn't really see my kids eating them. But yeah, nuts and seeds, really easy to get that zinc in, and different meats as well.
I think the daily dose is like 3 teaspoons of pepitas a day for kids. Is there 100% RDI for pepitas off the top of my memory? So it's not too hard to get that in as well.
No.
So yeah, I just crush up lots of nuts and seeds, including pepitas, and Brazil nuts, another key one, because you can't get selenium and too many other foods for thyroid function. With other nuts and seeds like cashews and almonds for magnesium, selenium, zinc. Mix that up, grind it up. I've got a processor, and then I pop it into their cereals, a few teaspoons each day, and then other meals that we're having. So make sure they're easily getting those nutrients in, so it's super easy to do.
ABC butter is like a good lazy version as well if you're needing it. You're not getting the pepitas, but you're getting almonds, Brazil nuts, and cashews.
Yeah. The only other thing we haven't touched on is omega-3s.
Delicious. So omega-3s, big signs that I see in the clinic are scaly skin.
Mine are behavioural issues, speech
and
delays.
Behavioural issues, yeah. But like, so with eczema, if you're just not seeing that skin 100% healing.
Or it's dry.
Or your skin's really, really dry. Like you need to be, having water to hydrate your skin and getting those omega-3s in there as well. But neurological brain function, having those omega-3s, making sure that you're having good quality omegas and choline during pregnancy as well. That helps to positively impact baby's brain health, eye function so much.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I think remembering that if your kids aren't having fish a few times a week, you should be supplementing with cod liver oil on our online store. Teaspoon a day, because omega-3s, we have non-fish forms of omega-3s are ALAs, and our body actually has, everyone's transfer rate from ALA, so plant-based omega-3s, to active omega-3s are different. So your kid might be having 2 teaspoons of chia seeds and you're like, oh, they're getting 100% of the RDI, but their transfer rate might only be 30%. So that's why a lot of times vegans can be low on omegas, because they're having their RDI of ALA to transfer to omega-3, but doesn't that mean their body's actually transferring all of that well?
It is really hard to transfer those. Like it is hard with dietary restrictions, and not preaching any sort of dietary dietary diets at all. But fish oil is one of the best ones, fatty fish, but
salmon, mackerel,
like mercury, going low mercury. So one thing that my mum taught me, once again, to making spaghetti, was throwing in a couple of sardines as you're frying off like garlic and onion. Sardines are really good because their bones are edible, and they're good forms of calcium.
High calcium.
Yeah.
Best source of calcium is through bones.
Yeah, and you're cooking it down. It sounds so gross.
Oh, bone broth is also really high in magnesium and calcium.
Yeah, I love bone broth too. Probably nobody will want to eat at my house anymore, worried that they're getting sardines. But like cooking that down into it and then frying off like your meat in your cast iron pan, you're getting calcium, you're getting omegas, you're getting digestible forms of zinc and iron. Perfect meal if you're having spag bowl, just refined into a naturopathic version.
Yep. So I would say that if your child's not having omega-3s a few times a week, then I would be supplementing with cod liver oil, because it's not worth running the risk of them being deficient in it, because it's the biggest impactor on learning and IQ and developmental delays in speech. You need that for neurotransmitters to function and produce, and hormones as well, to be able to speak and function properly. And it's the biggest deficiency I notice that causes those factors too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's everything I think we need to talk about in regards to deficiencies and omegas and omega-3. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Another thing, omega-3 in cod liver oil is really, really high in vitamin A and vitamin D, so amazing for the immune system too. Thanks for joining us on this week's Unhinged Health Journey. Until next time, may your health be natural and your days be balanced.
Thank you. Bye.